Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, where we share all things people stuff in leadership. Learn from leaders who have done the hard yards and learnt from experience. Hear from expert authors about the latest insights from culture to strategy and messy people dynamics. Get tips and insights from multiple award-winning author and leadership expert herself, Zoe Routh. Now, on with the show.
Hello, Zoe Routh here, your friendly neighborhood leadership navigator. I love to work with leaders and teams on the tough stuff in leadership. Things like wrestling crocodiles, climbing mountains, and slaying dragons. Well, no, not really. Dealing with the people stuff in leadership. That's what I love to help teams and leaders work on. So my question for you today is, have you ever dreamt of working at or leading a company that gets awarded the best places to work? Woohoo! I certainly have, and I read the list with a bit of envy every year. Even though I run my own business, sometimes I dream a little bit about what it'd be like to be part of a bigger team. Well, my guest today is a leader in an organization that has won one of the best places to work for industries of 100 people or more, or workplaces with 100 people or more. Her name is Hanna. She is the People and Culture Manager for Kapitol Group, which is a construction company headquartered in Melbourne. And our conversation takes a really deep look at what it takes to be a great place to work, how we can encourage the participation and safety of women in all workplaces, especially male-dominated workplaces. So we have quite a rich conversation about how we can transform workplaces from the ground up, from little things like feedback through to bigger things like whole systems redesign. It's a far-reaching, fabulous conversation. Let's get into it. So all the way from beautiful Melbourne, welcome to the show, Hanna.
Thank you so much for having me, Zoe.
I am thrilled to be talking to you about people and culture stuff and best places to work and how we can go about building fabulous places where people love to show up, especially in male-dominated industries. So you have quite a background of many different organizations and so on. I want to know how you actually got into the people and culture space and what was your journey to now?
Yeah, great question. It's a bit of a convoluted journey. So I studied psychology all my life from a very young age. I wanted to be a psychologist to help people. I just had this I want to help people frame of mind from a young age. So I studied psychology and did my honours in eating disorders in adolescent females, which was challenging in itself. But then when I went out to industry to start working, I just realised that it just simply wasn't for me. I'm a very empathetic person. I'm a very high-feeling person, and that's very difficult to be in a psychology role. So I thought I maybe was a bit too young to take all of that on, so I thought I'd take a sidestep. And coincidentally, a company I'd been doing some admin with offered me a human resources administrator role. And to be honest, I didn't really know what that meant at the time. But I took the role because I didn't know what I was going to do with my life now that I'd studied for a degree I wasn't going to use. And I ended up falling in love with it because in HR, now called People and Culture, it's all about understanding people, what motivates them, what drives them, how to have difficult conversations, how to get groups of very different people working together. So I found that all of the skills I'd learnt in psychology were really, really, really applicable to this human resources function I'd never really heard much about. So I really fell in love with it all the way back then. And I've been in the industry now for 21, 22 years, and it just gets richer and richer as time goes on, as companies really see more and more the value that people and culture can add and how important people are and how important culture is to tangible business outcomes like profit and customer satisfaction. So the longer I'm in it, the more I really continue to fall in love with it.
Way back when you started in psychology and you specialized in eating disorders for women and girls, and you had an empathy overload. I'm not sure if those were your words. It's sort of what I heard in that. What did you learn? I'm just curious about that because we don't often have people on the show who specialize in that area. What did you learn about women and girls way back then around the whole eating disorder thing?
Yeah, so the reason I did that was I actually went to an all-girls school myself, and I saw a lot of pressures around body image, and I chose that topic out of personal experience, I suppose, of seeing a lot of that around me. And my topic was really around how can the relationship with parents help protect against eating disorders, or really not help protect young girls against that. So I looked at things like the pressures of social media, family home structures. And look, it was really challenging area because it's so rife. And it's not just females, by the way. Obviously, there's a lot of males that suffer from body dysmorphia and eating disorders as well. But it's so challenging because it is so rife, and still our society is really not set up to protect young girls around that and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse with social media. So I learnt that I was almost a little bit defeated by it, I suppose, because I learned how rife it was and how hard it is to protect girls against that, the way our education systems and social media and society as a whole is really, really set up. So my thesis certainly did not find any answers to the question of how to solve the issue, but I really just learnt that you can help protect young girls from that. There's a lot of self-awareness that you need to help teach young girls, and I think that's a topic that schools don't teach. Schools don't teach emotional awareness, self-awareness, self-management. They are starting to teach a lot more positive psychology now, and I think that's brilliant, but back in my day, none of that was taught. And that's interestingly followed me the whole way through my career. I find in leadership training that I do, and in things like tackling gender bias in the workplace, this concept of self-awareness and understanding your own unconscious biases and being able to manage your own emotions and being able to self-reflect and learn and grow is really important in leadership and in culture as well. And my thesis kind of sowed the seeds for it back then, that parents and teachers being able to help girls and all young people grow that self-awareness and that objectivity and reflecting back on self and what you're learning and how you can self-manage and not be overwhelmed by all of the incoming pressures and information. I think that was really important, and interestingly still links to what I do today.
It does, and all the research that I've read too shows that self-awareness and being a self-reflective practitioner is the key to being a capable and competent leader through the various stages of leadership maturity. So you went from one challenging environment, women and girls with body dysmorphia and eating disorders, into HR, and specifically HR in male-dominated areas. So, what has been your experience? And, well, first of all, what kinds of industries have you been in, so people can get an idea of the differences there? Well, let's start there. That's my first question.
Sure. So I've worked in people and culture roles in aviation, mining, government, engineering, information technology, and construction.
So what is it about these, all except for maybe government, are very male-dominated typically? What attracted you into those types of environments?
Just to get self-reflective, speaking of self-awareness, I grew up in a house where it was my mother, my sister and I, and then I went to an all-girls school. So I think, funnily enough, I think I was almost rebelling against that and wanting to go the other way. I never saw myself as a super girly girl, not to stereotype, but I didn't feel like a fish out of water at my school, but I certainly, I loved footy. I loved all of the things that back in those days that weren't being embraced by girls. And I think I actually felt more comfortable in male-dominated environments at the start. And then I just found that the challenges were so great for females. I then became really passionate about how do we make these male-dominated industries more safe and comfortable for women, to attract more women in, because I very quickly saw the importance of diversity. And if you don't have a diverse workplace, it's really hard to have a great culture. So I then purposely chose to stay in those industries for that reason. I didn't purposely choose to get into them in the first place. As I said, I fell into my first HR role, but I think once I'd been in a couple of male-dominated industries, I then started purposely choosing them because I really am passionate about gender diversity.
So how do we do that? How do we actually create safe places that encourage women to participate where they haven't traditionally been participating?
gosh, that is such a complex, nuanced question. Look, firstly, I think organisations and industries as a whole have to understand the value of diversity. I still think there are some companies and industries that are doing it as a tick box exercise. Either governments are telling them they have to with quotas, or shareholders are telling them they have to, and they're not actually doing it because they truly and honestly, authentically believe that all of the value you can get from diversity, and that's great cultures, it's innovation, it's even, the research will clearly show you that more diverse companies profit more. Companies with more gender diverse boards succeed and profit more. So the research is all there, but I think there still needs to be that belief, because if you're doing it as a tick box exercise, it won't be authentic and you won't actually create a safe environment. So that's the very, very starting point, is to believe it. Then I think you do have to work on those biases. For no fault of their own, a lot of people who have worked in male-dominated industries have grown a lot of unconscious biases. They don't even know they have them. So you need to tackle those, and that ties back into our earlier conversation around self-awareness. I think you can't tackle unconscious bias without a lot of training and support around self-awareness, because if it's an unconscious bias, of course, you don't even know it's there. So how are you even going to start tackling it? So I think you really need to work on that. Unfortunately, it is a catch-22 in construction where I am at the moment. We need more women to show young girls that there are role models in that industry and that is a safe and welcoming environment. So it's a bit of a catch-22 until you get to a certain tipping point. So I think, even though I've never been a fan of quotas as such, I think some government regulations and initiatives like that to almost force the issue in industries that haven't forced the issue themselves, well, then they will just see the benefits clearly, and then they'll be on board with everything that we need to do to attract and retain women. But look, an environment needs to be comfortable, respectful and safe for everybody. But if we're talking about women, there are some really basic things like language. I still work here on myself as well, on things like starting emails with, "Hey guys." So there's some non-neutral gender language that needs to disappear. In construction, it's not a great industry for that. It's "Hi guys," "Hey blokes," "the boys on site." We just need to change the language for a start, because if women aren't included in the language, of course, that's one huge part. We then need to make sure that the practices tailor to women as well. Still in Australia, women are predominantly the primary caregivers. So, things like some male managers just don't even think about it. They'll book a team meeting at 3:30 p.m, which of course a lot of people have to go and pick up kids. So of course a lot of the women can't dial into that meeting, but the thought doesn't even go through the head of, I probably shouldn't book a meeting at that time of day. I probably should book a meeting at a time of day that it's more likely that everyone can make it. So there are really small, tiny, basic habits that need to change for women to feel included for a start. And then you get into the respectful and safe behaviours. There's a lot of communication styles, and of course I'm stereotyping here, but there's a lot of communication styles where the stereotype is males have a more aggressive style. In industries that are male dominated, that makes it feel like an aggressive environment. In construction, that is the case. You do feel like there's a lot of aggression on a construction site, and that does not feel safe to women, both physically and psychologically does not feel safe when there's a lot of, chest puffing and shouting going on. So there's some really small basic habits we can change around language and things like that, but then we need to really work on respectful behaviours. We then need to get role models into these industries so young girls know it's an option for them. If you can't see it, you think you can't be it. And look, the word construction was never once mentioned at my school in the 10 years that I was at my school. So it's just not an option in girls' minds to go into some of these industries. So I think we need to broaden how we talk about career choices for young girls. So all industries are on the table. I think the media doesn't help with some industries. Again, I'll talk construction because it's what I'm in. Every time you open the newspaper, it's about women not being welcome in the construction industry and bullying and discrimination for women, and it's the same for some other industries. So that's all they're reading. So of course they're scared to go into those industries. There's nothing that sounds welcoming about it. So I think we need to share the good stories as well. And there are a lot of good stories in mining and engineering and aviation and IT and all these traditionally male-dominated industries. I think the media need to get on board with sharing the good stories because there's so many opportunities and so much money in some of these industries that women just are precluded from getting the opportunities and earning those big salaries because it's not seen as a safe and welcoming environment for them.
I think one of the things that contributes to this as well, you talked as a starting point, the belief that diversity adds to the bottom line. I think there's some other beliefs as well, and maybe they're biases, but I think they're kind of beliefs that people have. In talking to another professional services firm, which is male dominated, so they have 50-50 male-female employment, and yet the leadership is mostly male. And this, I see this repeated in a lot of professional services firms. And I asked the leaders, like, okay, so you're working hard at recruitment. What about the promotional and career tracking aspect? Where are your systems falling off and failing the women? And some of the responses are deflecting responsibility. It's more like, well, the women self-select out because they want to take 5 years out to do child rearing. There was that response. And there's also the responses, a lot of women don't want to come into the role because the way it is, you have to work long hours, you have evening functions, and this doesn't suit the family life. So a lot of women are self-selecting out of those leadership roles. And I think that's possibly true that women are doing that. And I think the problem is, and I'm just curious about your opinion about this, it's not that women are making the choice to self-select out. That is the problem. I think it's potentially the work systems that we have in place that expect people to work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or later with all these functions, and that there's a re-engineering that needs to happen with our workflows. Is that what you've come across in your experience too, or have you got a different take?
No, I 100% agree with you, and I get a bit angry. I call a bit of BS when people are trying to say, the industry's set up that way, and if women don't want it, then they don't have to work in the industry. I think the industries need to change. I'll use construction again as an example. Construction sites open at 6:30 or 7 in the morning. There are no childcare centres open at 6:30 or 7 in the morning. So that just immediately precludes a whole bunch of primary caregivers who still are largely female in Australia from those jobs. Why can't they start at 7 or 7:30 and have some staggered work times? So I think there's a lot more flexibility we can introduce into all industries to make them more, work better for females who have caregiving responsibilities. So I think a lot structurally can change. I think the childcare system in Australia needs to change. I think the way we think about and subsidise parental leave needs to change as well. So I think there are some government policy issues that can change, and I think industries also just need to change the structural way they're set up and the expectations of employees. You shouldn't expect your employees to go to after-work functions all the time, regardless of if they're male or female or a parent or not. Some people have other hobbies and other responsibilities outside of work. It should never be a requirement of work that you go to after-hours functions every time. Now and then, of course, but not regularly. So, yeah, there's definitely some structural shifts that need to happen to make these industries more welcoming and adaptable and comfortable for females.
Now, when we first started talking, you were sharing the great celebration that Kapitol, your employer, a construction organization, has won one of the best places to work. Was it the full category, or was it a specific category that it won?
We won the over 100 employee category, so number one in that category, which was just so fantastic.
It is so fantastic. So fantastic, A, for any organization to win that, and B, for a construction company in particular, because it goes against the grain about what we know about construction companies as we've just been describing it. So what is the secret sauce? What has Kapitol done differently to become a great place to work, particularly in construction?
Yeah, great question. Look, I think we're really authentic about what we want to create, and we want to break the mould. The industry is way behind when it comes to gender equality, innovation, work-life balance, technology, et cetera, et cetera. So we know we're not there yet, but I think our employees appreciate that we want to break the mould and not just make more money, but also I think we're really authentic in why we ask for feedback and the fact that we action our feedback. So last year we came 24th in the best places to work. That was great. We were so chuffed with 24th. But what we did is we took all of the feedback that came through the survey, we workshopped it with every level of leadership, we came up with a really detailed action plan, we published that action plan, and we regularly updated people on where we were at, and we just ran the feedback to ground. And I think people really appreciate when you listen to them and you action their feedback. I think those two things go a really huge way to being a good place to work, because at so many places you don't have a voice, or you raise feedback and it goes nowhere. You raise constructive criticism about things, you raise great ideas on how to improve, and you just never hear back and you never see anything change. So we're not a perfect place to work. We're a good place to work, and we want to be an absolutely phenomenal place to work. I think our employees just appreciate that we give them the due respect to say, you're the ones who know best what's working and what's not. You're the one out there building the buildings. You tell us. We're not a arrogant leadership team that sit there and say, we know best what to do for you, and here are all the initiatives we're going to roll out. We actually say, hey, what do you want and need from us? And then we go ahead and do those things. So that's not a groundbreaking answer to say, hey, we listen to our employees and then we action the feedback. But I think that's gone a huge way to actually our employees saying, wow, they listen to me and they action it, and I can see the commitment. So we're really committed to breaking the mould, again, with gender, with work-life balance. The construction industry is absolutely horrendous for work-life balance, which results in a lot of mental health issues, a lot of burnout, a lot of people leaving the industry, safety issues. There's a whole lot of flow-on effects to poor work-life balance practices. So we're not sitting here saying, hey, we want to incrementally make it better. We sit here saying we want to overhaul the system. We want the construction industry to run a Monday to Friday week, not a Monday to Saturday week every week. You know, we're trying to really push the envelope and do something different. And I think our employees see that we authentically mean that and we're passionate about it, and they respect that and they get to get involved, which is exciting.
It's a big thing to want to change an industry from the inside out and to crack those norms, because it is such a deadline-driven, budget-driven sector. It's hard to say, no, instead of Monday to Saturday, we're doing Monday to Friday. There would be a lot of construction businesses who'd be like, that's a whole day out of a week of productivity gone. So it's like a little fishy swimming against a massive tide in that regard. So I'm curious about what are some of the suggestions that came through from your team about how to improve the workplace?
So last year, one of the big ones was around site facilities for females. So even though we have very respectful employees, unfortunately, sometimes not all of our subcontractors are. So we got really unbelievable feedback that the males were using the female bathrooms because they were more private and they were cleaner. So believe it or not, we had to go and put locks on all the female site facilities so the male subcontractors weren't using those facilities. But also we got feedback that in general the facilities on site were just not, comfortable, nice looking. It's very old school construction that you pop up a construction shed and pop some desks and a microwave in it and Bob's your uncle, there you go. So no, we created a whole process where we design the facilities properly. They're actually decorated properly. There's nice coffee machines in there, and one of ours has a table tennis table, and it sounds really basic again, but our employees said, hey, we don't love coming to work because it's a pretty drab environment to work in. So we went, great, let's have our design managers actually design our site sheds, not just hire a site shed and plop it on site. So we got some really tangible feedback like that was easy to address. We then got feedback around a lot of process inefficiency. So people saying, we've grown really quickly, our systems and processes now don't match what we do and our size. So we are, that old analogy that the duck above water looks like it's in control, and under the water the duck's madly paddling. And we got feedback that our systems and processes created that. So we did a huge amount of work on implementing new processes, making things more efficient, automating procedures, getting rid of double data entry, you name it. We tried to find efficiency in every little corner, under every little rock in the business, which also feeds into the work-life balance, which again was the third large part of the feedback came back around work-life balance. So since then, we've done a huge amount of work. We implemented that for all but one role in the business, which is our site managers, that everybody's meant to be working Monday to Friday only, with our site managers doing rotating Saturdays. We have put a lot of effort into reducing hours, and we now send out a monthly survey getting people's feedback on whether it's working, if it's getting better or worse, and what ideas people have. So every single month we keep a spotlight on hours, because we know it's very easy for it to spin out of control in this industry. I interview people from other companies who tell me they work 70, 80, 90 hours a week. They never see their kids. I've interviewed people who tell me that they got divorced because of their job in construction. And over here, I almost get emotional about this, but, at our Christmas party, I actually had one of the wives come up to me and say, thank you, my husband came to our kids' footy this year for the first time ever since the kids started playing sport, because he's worked every single Saturday since I've met him. And again, I get a bit emotional about it, but making what are small changes to us, yes, they cost money, but the return on investment is worth way more than the money we put into making these programs work. And again, we're not perfect. The monthly hours survey this month shows that it's not where we need it to be. Better than it was, still not where we need it to be. So we're just going to keep working on it and keep working on it, because it's too important to not work on it.
Oh, that's lovely. What a lovely story. That's a dad who's got to now be there for his kid. And that's a systems change in itself, a happier kids, happier family. And it starts towards ending some of those other challenges that we started the conversation with, whether it's body dysmorphia or lack of confidence or mental health issues. Just that one small change can have a massive tipping effect across people's personal lives, which is beautiful. I want to ask you a personal leadership question. You've got amazing insights and amazing passion for leadership and the difference that a good workplace can make. What are you most proud of on your leadership journey?
It's a great question, because I think a lot of people are not good at reflecting on the positives. We all look at what's gone wrong, and I'm certainly one of those people, so I rarely reflect back on the good things and what I'm proud of. So, thank you for raising it. We all should do more of that. Look, I think I'm proud of not one particular event, but I'm proud of leaving places better than I found them. I'm proud of raising more awareness of why it's important to look after people and everything they bring with them. People aren't robots. People are people with hopes and dreams and lives and families and mental health issues and all of those things. I'm proud of being able to move the gender needle in a couple of industries I've worked in. And I'm also really proud of normalising mental health conversations. So, I don't know if I'm stereotyping again, but male-dominated industries seem to be worse at openly talking about mental health issues, and that's probably one of the contributing factors to why mental health issues are higher in industries like construction. So I've worked really hard on being very open about my own mental health issues, but also helping businesses understand the power of vulnerability and the power of allowing people to be themselves and be authentic about everything that they bring, including their struggles. So I'm proud that in a few companies I reflect back on, when I got there, you would never have mentioned mental health issues. It was a bit shunned. And when I left, people were more open and accommodating and accepting talking about those. And that's something that I'm certainly proud of, going all the way back to where my career started in psychology. To be able to normalise some of those conversations, I think is really powerful.
And that's really important work, and it takes a lot of courage to show and share our struggles. So thank you for the work that you're doing in that. You mentioned that you're more likely to focus on failures and failings. What has been an important failure that you've learned a lot from? So just to bring that up.
Yeah, so, I once interviewed for a HR manager role at a business that had never had HR before, which always really excites me. But in the interview, the CEO said, I don't want HR. The board's forcing me to have HR. I don't believe in HR. This isn't going to work. If you take this role, trust me, it's not going to work.
Great.
And he basically said all of this to me in the interview. And, young, naive Alice went, yay, great challenge. Let me take on this wonderful challenge of changing this guy's mind. And look, it was a really tough 12 months. It was quite a toxic environment. I didn't move the needle very far. I probably moved the needle 5%. I probably didn't leave the place that much better than I found it. But the lesson really for me was not to not take on challenges. I encourage everybody to take on challenges. But really that, I should have asked him a lot more questions in that interview process, and I should have really clarified who he was and his opinions and what I really could and couldn't achieve there. So now when I interview for jobs, I know exactly what I want and don't want, and I interview the executives more than they interview me. When I took the job here at Kapitol Group, I spent a lot of time making sure that the founders, talk on culture was not lip service, because of course in every interview, founders to a HR person are going to say, we believe in people, people come first, we want to create a great culture. But that can be lip service. So that definitely was a failure of mine to just take the job and not really deep dive in. And I now am very different as a candidate. If anybody ever interviews me for a role, I'll probably interview them more than the other way around. So I really learnt to make sure that the challenge you take on is the right one for you at that time. You can't save the world. You can't take on every challenge. So I learnt to assess every challenge, whether at job interview or within a role, assess every challenge, decide what you can achieve and what you can't achieve, because I think if you try and take on too much and challenges that are set up to fail, that has a lot of impacts on you personally as well. So I'm much better at deciding which challenges I'm willing to take on and which challenges I'm not willing to take on, and just getting better at asking harder questions, which I wasn't good at back then.
So lesson learned, avoid the red flag to the bull situation. If they say they're not interested and you will fail, maybe listen. And say, okay, not for me. Yeah. Oh, that's painful. Thank God we have youth to help us get us through those kind of naive lessons, I guess. How do you reboot? How do you maintain your energy? Are there particular leadership practices that you do that help keep you on top of your game?
It's a really great question, and something I think we probably don't train leaders in a lot. I think we train leaders a lot in how to be a great leader while you're at work, forgetting that they're people as well and need to recharge themselves. So I actually ran some resilience training internally not long ago with our graduates, and I talked to them a lot about the practices that how you build resilience, so when times are tough, you already have that built. And a lot of that is around that self-awareness, as it came back to before. A lot of it is around celebrating successes, but also the basics of, getting great sleep and making sure you maintain great diet and doing the things that fill up your cup that you love and making sure you have the time for them. So some of the things I love to do, okay, I'm going to be really authentic here. I love my cats. I'm a crazy cat lady, so I make sure that I get time every day to play with my cats. No, I love them. I'm totally fine to say that on a podcast because we talk about authenticity, and there it is. I'm a crazy cat lady. No, I make sure I go for a lot of walks and listen to podcasts because I love to learn. And even if it's about work-related topics, it actually keeps me fresh to be learning. So I block time whenever I can to go for a walk in the fresh air, get some sunshine, listen to a podcast. Sometimes I listen to crazy topics that have nothing to do with anything. Like I listened to one the other day on multiverse theory, which I have no idea about, and quantum computing, which I have no idea about, but it just gets my brain firing in different ways, which gets me really excited, and that refreshes my cup. Even if I never have anything to do with quantum computing, that walk that day really re-energized me for the next day.
Have you got, just on the podcast, have you got a favorite podcast, or is it themes that you like to listen to?
Probably themes that I like to listen to. So I'm one of those people that once I find a topic, I'll jump down every rabbit hole there possibly is to learn as much as I can about that. So I'm the sort of person that if I decide I want to learn about quantum computing, I'll put quantum computing into Apple Podcast search and pick a few podcasts that I love. But no, look, I do love listening to Tim Ferriss. I think he's got some great podcasts, topics and interviewees. I learn a lot from his podcast. That's probably one that I listen to pretty regularly. Yeah, that's probably the main one that's on my rotation list. And then I'll jump around all sorts of random crazy topics from, I don't know, as I said, quantum computing through to breath work and meditation and everything in between. So if you looked at my Apple podcast, it's one of the most eclectic collections. They definitely don't have an algorithm for what to show me that I'll like next, because it will be something incredibly random.
Thank you, Alice. Now, I interrupted you. You were going to give us your last point about how you reboot.
Oh, I can't remember what it was now. I just make sure that I spend time with friends and family that I love. Oh, no, I remember what I was going to say. I think it's really important to know what you're passionate about. A lot of people don't. If you say to people, what are you passionate about? They'll say, I love my footy team, which is fine to be passionate about that. But they find it really hard to articulate what really gets them out of bed in the morning, aligned to their values. I think a lot of people don't have their own defined value statement, like companies have it stuck up on the wall. Not many individuals know their own values and have defined them. So I think you need to know what you value. You have to have passions aligned with your values. And then if you spend time doing those things, that really can replenish your cup very quickly. So I have a defined Alice's value statement, and I make sure that I'm living and breathing those.
What is Alice's value statement?
Oh, gosh, there are 6 of them. Now I have to remember them. So what are they? They're courage, so be scared and do it anyway. I'm terrified of a lot of things, but I have to make sure that I do the things I'm scared of regularly, which I am in a good habit of doing now. This is terrifying to me. I've not been on many podcasts in my life, so here I am doing something that terrifies me. Respect, so making sure that you understand everybody has something to contribute. Part of my language, but give a I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on the podcast.
We'll fill in the blank. It's all right.
Great. I give a shit about whatever I do, so I make sure anything I do I'm really passionate about. Togetherness, it's not a word. I made it a word, that nothing can be achieved as a person. So everything I do, I make sure I either am part of a group or bring people along with me to learn. And there is one more. And I can't remember that. Isn't that terrible? I can't remember my own value statement. I'm happy to send it to you later. But yeah, I've defined them. I print them. They were stuck on my wall until we moved house. I need to stick them back up again just as a daily reminder. These are your values. Make sure you're living your values. And I do use them. I mean, I've left jobs that no longer align to my own personal values and moved to jobs that I'm more sure do align to my personal values. So it's worth taking the time to define your own personal values, because you can use them inside and outside of work to make decisions, to make sure everything you do is aligned.
Alice, I think that's a fabulous way to end our conversation. It's been an absolute delight to hear your insights and your journey, and to feel your passion come through about making a difference and looking after people in the workplace. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So our theme for this quarter on the podcast is leading change, creative thinking. And what I love about what Alice contributed is that creativity doesn't have to be complex. It can be as simple as, hey, asking people what they think. And one of the key takeaways I took from this conversation was the value of seeking feedback and closing the loop and acting deeply, thoroughly, extensively, completely on the feedback that is given to you when you seek it, especially in the context of how can we be a better employer, how can we be a better place to work. So if you're going to take anything out of the show, I would say, hey, take that piece. I think it's really, really powerful. So a couple of updates. My debut novel, The Olympus Project, is out in paperback form on my website at zoerouth.com. Click on Books and The Olympus Project, and you can get a personally autographed signed copy from me direct. The ebook and print-on-demand edition will be available on Amazon towards the end of November. So in the meantime, this is the one place where you can get a paperback copy personally autographed by the author herself. I had a lot of fun writing this book, and it is a delight to get it out into the world, and I do hope you enjoy it. It's a near future speculative fiction, science fiction book on the first community world designers on the moon and all the corporate thrilling aspects that come along with that. So plenty of turmoil, plenty of mystery, and plenty of challenge in there. So you can find that again at zoerouth.com. Click on books, click on The Olympus Project. In the meantime, live well, lead well.
You've been listening to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast with leadership expert Zoe Routh. For more about people stuff and to contact Zoe, go to zoerouth.com.